Let's do a mic check to start. No echo this evening. Excellent. I'd like to welcome everybody at home to the August 19th meeting of the Dairy Conservation Commission. Prior to rising for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'll ask that all devices be silenced here on the board and also in the audience to not disrupt the pledge. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order and rise all for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In case of emergency this evening, please do not use the elevator. We have stairs in the back and an emergency exit up here to the front. A member of the commission can help you if you need assistance on the way out. I will start this evening with introductions of commission members to my left.
Eileen Chabot, good evening.
Grace Reisdorf, good evening.
Paul Dion, good evening.
Rick Metz, good evening.
Bob Boonstra.
Charlie Foote, Town Council Liaison.
Thank you for attending, Charlie. Mr. Metz, will you sit for Mr. Bezanga, please?
Certainly will, thank you.
First order of business, I passed out copies and sent a digital of minutes from 8/5/2024 meeting. Any commentary on the minutes as sent?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of August 5th as presented.
We have a motion for Mr. Dion to approve the minutes as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Eileen seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Does 3 count as a passing vote? 3-3?
I'll approve.
Okay, abstentions on record will remain for Mr. Metz and Ms. Reisdorf. For the first time ever, we have no written correspondence this week.
Wow.
None.
Wow.
Incoming.
Vacation
know?
week.
Vacation week, apparently,
The state's off.
which is good. The presentation site plan review for 19 Elm Street, tax map 29, lot 128, has come off the agenda for this evening. There was some additional TRC comments in between the request to meet and tonight's meeting that they are going to be back at some point in mid to late September. So that large order of business has come off the table. We do have some work I drafted and shared out based on the 2 job descriptions that Eileen had shared and numerous ones from Bob. We kind of drafted what would be put out for the job description for the position that I have tentatively titled Conservation Land Manager, which is up for debate for those if they'd like to debate that and change the name of that. The only pieces of that we would discuss tonight to push forward to both HR and to further the conversation with Mr. Karen and would be the, the duties portion and the additional skills portion below that. Before I open it up for commentary on the draft that was sent, Mr. Foote, did I send you this copy?
I haven't gotten it. Doesn't mean he didn't.
I don't know if I included you on that thread. For this meeting, it was tagged in Sunday with the agenda.
I have 2 copies.
You have 2 copies?
Want one, Charlie?
Oh, thank you.
I just gave him
Excellent.
one.
Turns out.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So seeing that Councilor Foote is looking at it for the first time, again, the only things that we're going to digest are the duties as written and the requirements. Everything else is still left to be adjusted with HR as we further discussion with Mr. Karen. I'll give the group another minute here to read through that, and then we'll open the floor for discussion on what has been drafted. Okay. Open to some commentary. I'd like to start with Mr. Boonstra and move down the line if possible. Any commentary from you, Mr. Boonstra?
All my comments are in there because we've corresponded, so I'm good.
No comments from Mr. Boonstra. Mr. Metz still digesting?
Are we going to be able to find someone with the experience that is required under here? As a 20 per hour week employee or? And how coordinated are they going to be with Parks and Rec, and is Public Works going to be coordinating with them? What equipment is he going to use? I mean, there's a lot to flesh out here. I understand this is just a job description. I get it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more to do that, but those are just some of the things that came out at me real quick.
Yeah, in the earlier conversation, the overall guidance would be coming from the Conservation Commission. The day-to-day check-in, if needed, would be through Parks and Rec covers a lot of our trail system. Major work would come from DPW, so it's under the Parks and Rec bucket for now. Based on the requirements, I believe that we will be able to find somebody to do this position. You know, again, under the requirements, the ability to pass a background investigation and employment drug screen
That's
is number
standard,
one.
yeah.
That's standard. 1 to 3 years experience, required natural resource management. That can be something that can be unpacked, but in reality, somebody who's been involved with any outdoor program, recreation program, conservation initiative, trail works, things like that would qualify as having experience. You know, I put Microsoft Office Suite only because there is reporting that needs to be done, and you need computer literacy to be able to complete this job now that some of our reporting requirements are online. And the last one for requirements, more for up to debate, but, you know, as folks on the board and talking with, you know, Mr. Kate, if we've got trail maintenance initiatives that the board needs to, as long as we have face shield, safety certified, cut-proof pants, we are able to run some power equipment. That would be the expectation with this person as well, that they'd be able to have some maintenance ability, small chip, nothing major, right? Anything that would be a safety concern for one person to take, we would partner with somebody to take out, like DPW. So I would say, in my estimation as written, we would have a good chance to find a candidate.
Perfect.
Mr. Dion?
I have no comments. I think this is a good template.
I'll speak for Mr. Bazanga, who's not here. He replied, "Looks good." So that's Rick's commentary. And this was Rick's origination, so I believe that if he's saying this looks good as is for now, that's at least one vote of solid confidence from Rick, so. Ms. Reisdorf?
If we're having him patrol the lands and help with regulation enforcement, is a bicycle going to do it? Or more like a quad or something where he could, these guys go by so fast. They should be outlawed. Right. It shouldn't be out there.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the rest of the group here, but I'll give my 2 cents on it. A lot of the properties that we would be asking this person to engage with probably are more on foot anyways.
Okay.
You know, we have some that could be, you know, traveled by quad, but the reality is they're not accessible or shouldn't be accessible. I'm thinking of like Coalmarsh today, right?
Well,
We have
yeah.
gates to be able to access, but to have somebody come in and out of there on a quad gives a visual that we may accept quads there.
Right.
So for the most part, it would be on foot with the occasional bike.
Okay.
Not many of our parcels are,
Yeah, no, I was
Bike
actually
ready.
thinking about Coalmarsh and the guy that has the quad that goes through there all the time.
Yeah.
Nobody can catch, so. I was-
well,
That's what prompted it.
we might have to park there someday and kind of, with reported use.
Okay.
Um,
The other thing was education. Do we want any kind of education requirement, at least a
Like a minimum?
GED or something, or something to indicate that he's,
We haven't fully fleshed this with HR yet. They may
Okay.
make a basic recommendation. I did look at some, Mr. Boonstra shared 5 or 6 applications for different types of roles. And if it was like a conservation land planner, and some of those roles there was listed. When it comes to like land steward type, I'll actually go back and look while we're getting some additional commentary post. But I believe for steward type work, which this kind of is, I don't know if there was a requirement for the town that Mr. Boonstra sent. but I'll check. That was Framingham, Mass. We got a lot of references from Mass, but I can check. We can certainly find out.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Eileen?
Hi, I think in reading it, it looks, it reads more like an advertisement than a job description because there's not a lot of accountabilities built into it. I think maybe once we get these candidates on board, we would prepare a more detailed job description with, what percentage of the time are they going to be doing various activities and what are our expectations on each of those, kind of drill down into that. I was wondering, a few things I was wondering about. In previous meetings, we had talked about having them do some enforcement work. There's no mention of that in here.
I don't see how they can do enforcement, though.
No?
No, they'd have to rely on reporting out to DPD for
Would-
enforcement.
code
Couldn't they
enforcement under the
coordinate with
state.
the
Enforcement, yeah.
enforcement, the code administrator
Mhm.
for that? I just think that would be, helpful. It says in here too, filing documents internally and sharing with external partners. Who are those external partners? Do we know?
So that would be following the monitoring report pathway. So we have LSIP that has to be reported on digitally. So there's a paper form they can bring to the field, and then
Right.
they have to submit it digitally. Same thing with LCHIP, and most of our CELT reports are in collaboration. So if we get some self-report, well, we would be getting them from CELT and filing them, but we have some that we need to share.
Okay. And then I was wondering about also coordinating RFP requests and bids as needed. Is that something for Parks and Recreation or something, like, we don't do that very often ourselves?
No, but on the maintenance aspect, as you think about some of the bridge work and things that may need to be done, going back to Rick's commentary, the idea that we would be able to take that on with one person in the role is probably difficult. So when you think about, okay, can we partner with DPW? In some instances, if resources are available and we can, the answer is yes, they're very supportive. But there are times when the answer is they can't do that. So we would be looking for an outside partner to come in and support us. This person would help kind of coordinate those resources so we could partner on, here's what the expectations of the job are. It would go out, they could come back to us at a meeting and report out, hey, these are the people that came, and give some prices for the work, what would we like to do? So they're like the air traffic controller, right? So instead of someone here taking on, they're able to kind of use some of that
Would they
paid
be,
hours to do that.
would they be qualified to prepare an RFP, or exactly how is that gonna?
Well, it depends on
No.
the work. I wouldn't expect them to do it themselves. We have some standards and procedures from the town in terms of how an RFP needs to go out.
Right,
So depending on the work, it's a sharing of responsibilities to make sure it goes out correctly.
okay.
I find that to be probably more on the rare side than being able to partner with DPW and also us looking at a project to say, hey, can we get this done? Can we not? I think as long as we've got more boots on the ground, more often than not, we'll be able to find resources to get it done.
And then I kind of had a concern with, in looking at some other, the job descriptions I had given you, just again, some accountabilities, like what's the percentage of time they're going to spend doing things for us versus Parks and Recreation and DPW? Like, we want to have some accountability there.
Sure. Yeah, we know we have to come up with an actual concrete outline by hours. We talked about that with Dave. So the reality is Rick and I will need to kind of take a look at this on a hard outline to say, at least from my view, in terms of hours, it's more of a 60-40, right? They got to come out, they got to get to know the land,
Right.
make a rotation through. We've got to get the initial reporting done, see them in 2 or 3 seasons. So with the amount of properties we have, there's enough to spend more time in the field.
Right.
And then kind of coordinate some of the data work to the back end. But essentially, we would be looking at a minimum reporting by property. And then as you can see in the monthly update to the commission, I would expect that if we're 20-ish hours, that we would be able to have at least 1 to 2 properties walked regularly in terms of actually getting active feedback on what's happening
And this
out there.
person will attend our meetings and update us as to what they've accomplished.
Yeah, as part of
And
their.
then we could even set further, hey, we want you to investigate this further, or, next week we want you to do this property or whatever.
Yep.
We can do that.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have to take into account when they show up in a meeting that
It's
it's a
chargeable.
paid, right?
Yep.
They're what?
It's a chargeable time to him.
Yes.
his
We
hours.
don't get paid, he or she has to be paid.
Correct.
Right, correct. And then the other thing I saw, like in requirements, you've got the drug screening and stuff. What about a valid driver's license? That seems to be like a pretty standard basic requirement that would need to be in here.
Yep, we could add that in there. I don't know how the town handles that. I'm assuming they have a standard procedure.
I think so, through HR, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
then
was
again,
just-
if
I
it's-
was
if
just
it's-
surprised not to see that. That's usually a very,
Then again,
mandatory requirement.
if it's going to be bicycle and walking, what if someone doesn't, they might not need a vehicle, depending, so that's something to consider as well.
Well,
Yeah.
to get to the property, they would need a vehicle,
Yeah,
right?
but there's other
We got
modes of
vehicle- we
transportation,
got
right?
properties all around
Yeah.
town, and we've got a large town, so you need a
Yep.
vehicle to get there.
Yeah, and I would think for this position, I mean, travel time starts when foot hits the trail, right? I mean, moving back and forth within some of these probably doesn't count. And again, we can break it down by hour for a deeper outline, but essentially we want to get this moving as fast as we
Right,
can.
no,
to-
I know, this reads
Karen,
more,
so-
like I said, more like an ad than it does a job description with
Yeah.
accountabilities. And you need something a little bit more detailed for when you're going to interview the person.
After discussion, any conversation after Eileen's commentary? Anybody else wants to add? Mr. Foot?
Just want to, so I agree with everything that was said here this evening, and some valid points, but to Eileen's point, I think, yes, this is like the initial, opening the can, essentially, and then we can get more detailed. And I think whoever is hired can also, maybe their experience might shed some light on what they noticed that the commission doesn't realize. So I think it's important to put in there that, and any other relevant duties as directed by the commission, as like the caveat at the end. So it could be
Yeah.
ever-changing, ever-evolving, and because they might bring up valid points that they notice while they're out there on their patrols and doing their activities.
Because they could go out, like I mentioned before, with regards to enforcement coordination, they might go out there and see a violation, when they're walking one of the conservation properties. They might find some encroachment onto one of our
Right.
properties from a neighbor, or they might find some other violation. And
I
so,
think then they'd go to code enforcement.
well,
Right.
we're
Or-
not saying
or
that
fish
here,
or-
though. We're not saying they're going to coordinate on those things, and we should have something like that.
Right, so I think to that point, I think, the primary responsibility from what I consider the enforcement part of it is, educate, document, and then report to the appropriate personnel, whoever
Coordinate
that
with the
might be.
appropriate personnel, right. Yep.
Obviously,
Yep.
but,
Yeah.
but overall, I think it looks good, and it can be fine-tuned with HR and then the town administrator as well. We can sit down and kind of really hammer this out a little further.
Yeah. I think behind the scenes, we'll have a document, and again, Rick's not here, but I think the idea was always that 60-40 time split of
Right.
being present, being visible, and if things are seen out there, then you increase the rotation on that parcel, so you're there more than some others, right, that are self-sustaining without any issues. But also, I think, the right applicant, we might get someone who's extremely gung-ho, ready, healthy, can hit a couple properties in a day in a quick loop. I mean, we may find that they say, hey, I'm happy to do, more than we think, right? And that changes the scope a little bit
Right.
too, so they can pick up additional responsibilities.
And I think it's also, a primary responsibility is being the face of the commission and being someone that's out there and interacting and, being
Right.
being accessible, I think is going to be an important aspect of the job as well. For
Yeah, and
people
that's why
walking the trails
I
and,
put uniform specifically in here, because that was a
Yep.
big point that we talked about earlier, is to have something that signifies, who you are and what you're doing out there.
gives the public an idea that people are out there actually taking consideration what's going on out there and they're interacting and, again, educating and relaying information back to
And they're
people, so-
visible, yeah,
Visible.
that's.
So I think that's a big
uniform
part of it. I
provides
think 90%
visibility.
of it should be visibility.
And we've had some requests from the next charter school for opportunities for their students to engage, and this is a good catalyst for that, right? So this conservation land manager will have ideas for projects and things that may need maintenance, so it's kind of an easy one-to-one handoff. They're already on the properties, they can help schedule, they can help coordinate. And maybe it'll be a feeder program, right? Maybe we'll get a junior conservation person that wants to volunteer. I mean, that's kind of the way that I see this going. The old Go Green days, right, to help keep this stuff maintained, if we can kind of build some momentum, we might be able to do that organically in support with Next and some other organizations. So, yeah, we'll get a full outline behind the scenes so you can see that. But I think we gotta crack this can of worms a little faster than we were. So
Yep.
we're pretty close. So I'll pass this through Rick's lens. I'm gonna have Rick champion this forward. So I'll have him work with HR on the salary front and the hours, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Obviously, there's benefits listed. This was from another position.
Right.
That's why we didn't go over that tonight. But do those still apply? Do they not?
Yeah,
They'll
just have them
cover that.
CC me on as well, and I can follow through with it as well
Copy.
on this end of it.
All right, so other business, which we do have some other business this evening. I just got to go into my email real quick. So, I did receive word from Mike Fowler on the Weber entrance. Got an email from Mike. So I want to thank Mike and the DPW crew for cutting some time in to do some brush clearing around that entrance. Over the weekend, this weekend, I've got to do a plexiglass assessment on the sign at is it Jackman Road?
Jackman.
Yes.
Jackman? So we've got to replace the plexiglass, restabilize the sign. That'll be done this weekend. Has to be done this weekend. And we're going to clean up that area. I mean, we've said we're going to. We're going to. It's done. So thank you, Mike, for taking care of the brush clearing at the Weber Forest entrance. Appreciate you. We did get a request from the Derry Police Department, and in years past, we did a Walk with a Cop program. That's what they were calling it, a Walk with a Cop. Get out on, we did Broadview Farm, we did Doolittle, and Patrolman Sullivan asked if we would be willing to do a couple dates in September and October. And they're normally during the week. Sometimes I can support them, sometimes I can't. It would be great if somebody had some availability to maybe walk them through a portion of Coalmarsh. Don't have to do the whole thing, but get them out, get them back, give them something to see. And I'm also thinking of the Low property, because its Low property's in fairly good shape, and the marsh in the back actually has come back a little bit. The beaver dam's been rebuilt up. It's actually in good shape.
Nice.
You could take the short walk to Low and back. Any interest from the board in leading any of these?
Sure.
I'll ask what dates they have available. They're fairly simple. I mean, I think we get like 8, 10 people, and you give a little history of the property and, so. If I can assist as well, I certainly will. September and October. Last item I have for tonight, at least on other business, is Dairy Fest. And I can't seem to find anywhere to sign up. So I don't know what's going on.
Oh, and do you know anything about that?
Should be a website.
I don't know if the form is active, but typically at the website, there'll be a form. Let me see what I can pull up.
I want to make sure the group wants to do that event. I think everybody did say they did want to. I coach baseball in fall. Okay, we are back up. Let's see. I don't see a form. Okay, I'll reach out through the email and we can find out. I supply the tent, the table, the chairs. The maps are downstairs. So I guess I just want to make sure once we get official, is that something we definitely want to do again this year? Okay. Our lovely garden master, Will Lowenthal, normally has picked up the slack the last few years while I haven't been there to at least get the tent, the tables, everything out of there. But obviously Will is not on the board anymore. So if we do that, does anybody have capability to remove the items that I get there?
Sure. I
Yeah,
think,
we can get them out of there.
Okay.
not by myself, probably.
That's if there's a spot left, so
I
we'll
can
find
help you,
out.
Grace.
We'll find out if there's a spot left. If there's not a spot left, we will work with the Derry Public Library to make sure we have plenty of maps there ready to grab, and we'll direct the public over there if there's no spots left. Okay.
Do we have new maps?
We have some.
Okay.
They're printed.
Okay. Just asking.
No, I know. Any other business from the board this evening? None.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Dyer motions to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Metz seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Abstentions? All right, folks, thank you. 7:25.